floats in those worlds in her own way. Maybe not with Black Madonna's, being she's from, I think, North Carolina. But all the same, America has its own spirituality that's very unique. And here's one of those people that lead the way in opening to new ideas, Mary Porter Kearns, Plant Oracle. I'm going to bring her onto the show. Hey, Mary.
Hi, Bart. You've got me laughing back here in the background. This is great.
Black Madonna. Da, 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 da. It really, I can't help it.
That's going to stick with me. That's great.
I have some friends, Alethea Sophia Pistis and her husband, Pete Wilson. They bought a Madonna in a antique store for 500 euros. And it's like you look at it and you go, this lady's been through some tough times.
Yeah.
You can tell she's had all of these knocks and scrapings, and all the pain isn't there. But when a professional uh, evaluator looked at it and goes, "Oh, you got a Black Madonna from the 13th century," it's like, hello. but at the same time, that Madonna is rocking, and because they have a magnificent hotel called Le Camp, and I go there a lot. I can go into their church, which there's a church in the hotel. No place else like France has stuff like that.
Right.
And there's the Black Madonna. And you can have this free time
Wow.
without any, people burning incense or doing holy chants or trying to give you
Wow.
Eucharist. It's
Wow.
just happening. So
Right.
I love it. Um, anyway, I digress, as I usually do.
No, thank you.
Why don't we start with, I just want to read your a bio to everybody. Um, Mary Porter Kearns is a writer, amateur naturalist, gardener, artist, weaver, and a voice for the flowers. Her upcoming book, The Flowers Are Speaking, is an intimate journey into the entwined evolution of flowers and human beings. That weaves together science, history, and earth-based mysticism to offer a radical vision of how we can best reconnect with the ancient guidance of the earth. In fall of 2022, she self-published the first edition of her oracle cards. The Flowers Are Speaking, which you're hoping to get that back out again in upcoming, along with this great book, The Flowers Are Speaking. And she also teaches guidance from flowers, workshops, and it's expanded the scope with a 5 session long workshop that would be on Zoom, where people are empowered to connect with the flowers through their own senses and intuition. But I personally would just like to go on a field trip with you, to be honest.
Yeah.
But if you're in North Carolina, right?
West Virginia.
Oops, close.
Close. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, a direction and then a name. It's kind of like, okay, call
No
me
worries.
ADD. I mean, it just says, after reading that, I just go, why haven't you been on my show before? Um, yeah, because this is just so smoking of a topic. And so maybe just to start about is, what, how is it that you teach people the process to learn how to have a communication with a flower? And we're talking flowers, not just plants in general, but specifically flowers.
Right. I mean, flowers obviously are part of a plant, but the flowers have that concentration of the plant's energy, and it's what really draws my attention the most. And so it's flowers.
Hmm.
But the plant is a big part of it. Anyway, an aside. How do I teach people? So this is something that humans used to do innately.
Hmm.
Back before agriculture and our civilized society. There wasn't somebody that came along and taught people which plants to eat and which plants to use for medicine. there was a communication with the plants that grew around them, and they knew how to listen to the plants and intuitively be guided on how to use them. And so it's more of a relearning of an ancient knowing that we used to have. And we've become so science based and so mind based that we've forgotten how to use our intuition and how to listen with our hearts. And this is a deep process for me too, as well. It's not like, oh, I'm suddenly this huge guru that knows how to use their intuition better than anybody else. No, I'm still feel like a newbie myself. But
It's an ongoing process for everybody.
exactly, exactly. I think just a huge piece of it is just giving yourself permission to
Yeah.
listen to your intuition and to trust it and believe it. And so in my classes, I also teach them some about the latest plant science, because the science is actually coming around and starting to acknowledge that plants are conscious and intelligent and communicate in ways that, we never ever, would let ourselves believe for several hundred years. And so that keeps our mind happy if we learn a little bit about that. And then our mind can
Yep.
go over and
Yep.
sit in the
Yep.
corner and be a little satisfied that this isn't quite so crazy. And
Yeah.
then work on the intuitive communication.
Yeah. It's like being from the esoteric into the mystic. The
Yes.
esoteric learns the stories and go, oh, that's so cool and fascinating. I'll have to think about that.
Right.
It's like, no, you don't think about it. You take a little bit of thought and you dive in.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Mhm.
what are some of the things that you kind of start recommending people practice, like first steps in doing this type of stuff?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing is to, plants are a lot slower than we are. Not to mention just
Mm.
because they don't move, they have to stay in one place, their actual physical life. So the first thing is to slow down. And the second thing is, the old saying about stop and smell the roses. Well, it's really a huge thing, And so just slowing down and noticing. And so what I say along those lines, especially, is take a walk, whether it's in your yard or down your street, or if you can go into a forest or a wild meadow, you know, and just slowly, instead of, like a hike, I've got to get from here to there. No, slow down and just notice everything. And in particular, notice what plant is catching your attention.
Mm.
So, it's like you think it's like, oh, I'm noticing that one because it's pretty. Well, what if it's the plant that is reaching out to you and making itself more known to you in some subtle way that your mind doesn't quite understand? So it's like walking into a room of people that you don't know. And so, like, how do you pick the first person to talk to? It's
Yeah.
you look around for what catches your attention. And so, or, what is wanting to catch your attention. It's sort of like the same thing.
Yeah,
It's like walking. Hmm.
it is. I so agree with you. It's that little signal, and this is what people have to catch. You get that little signal
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, this is drawing my attention over here,"
Yeah. And
and
it's not a coincidence.
it's
It's,
not a
it's
coincidence.
right. It's like, oh, yeah, there's a spark happening here, and recognizing that and allowing it to grow. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything that you would say, like, do you pay attention to your heart more, or your thymus, or your between your
Yeah.
hips, or whatever?
It may be different for different people, but I definitely think it's the heart language. Yeah, I think that's really where our intuition resides, is more in our heart than our mind.
Hmm.
So for me, it's my heart, but it could be a different part of the body for other people. Yeah,
Well, it makes sense with the heart because it's so well developed
right,
over everything. It's a mass communicator, in my
right,
opinion.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
They,
Eh, yeah. So how does that work for you when you go to see these things? What do you feel?
um, I think I've come to realize lately it's different every time. Sometimes and maybe this is true with people too. I keep trying to come back to analogies that most people experience. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, the love at first sight kind of thing. Like you're just,
Hmm.
or a friendship at first sight. Like you've known this person in a prior lifetime kind of connection.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
boom. like that. And sometimes it's a lot, sometimes it's a lot slower. You build this deep friendship, but it's a real slow, friendship over time. And I've found that the flowers are like that for me too. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, sit down right now, and I just drop into a space and go through my little process that I can talk about a little bit more, and just boom, get this big download. And sometimes that's a
Wow.
real slow, like, oh, that's a cool flag. I'll notice them a little bit today and notice them a little bit another day. I might like, I don't, what is that plant? And look it up and read a little bit about its history or its lore, and come back, spend a little more time, notice how it grows, get to know it over a whole season. And maybe it's a whole season kind of thing. And it just kind of builds until I actually finally give myself the space to actually let the whole experience and messaging channel open up and come through. So, yeah. There's never a black and white answer when
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
talking with me. So, yeah,
No, I mean, this is the whole point. This is not a black and white
right,
topic. It's
right.
like we give a lot of information and possibilities,
Yeah,
and then the people who want to try this have to just jump out there,
yeah,
so to speak.
right,
Everybody's psychic abilities are different. However, when
right.
we learn through somebody like your experience, we might have some reference points.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Is there like a familiar sensation when you have that connection?
Um, I call it like an aliveness, like a juiciness. Like I just get excited. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, that like I have a painting teacher that always called it like, what's what's your most alive, what's your point of aliveness right now, and then she'd also would talk about what's juicy,
Yeah, I
and
love that word.
that could be a good juicy or it could be a bad juicy. Sometimes it's like I hate that flower. Sometimes, you know, like, ah. In fact, I was doing that just 2 days ago with this big bush in my yard. It's a sweet bush, Calianthus, and we planted it 5 years ago. And about 3 years ago, it just took off. I mean, this bush was
Wow.
supposed to be like 6 by 6 at its max size. Well, it gets, I don't know, 12 or 15 feet tall, and it's in a
Whoa.
space that I don't have room for it to get that big. And so I'm literally cutting it off. It has these gorgeous flowers. They're just only about this big around, and they're maroon, and they've got this little subtle, sweet, spicy smell. But the whole bush is so voracious that I have to, because of the space it is in our yard, because it takes over and gets into this building and everything. I cut it back twice a year, like I cut off half of it twice a year. I mean, it's nuts. And so it's kind of this, I've had this love hate relationship with it. And then I realized I haven't ever sat down and actually listened to what you had to tell me. It's like sometimes it's like, there was this blinder and you didn't realize it. I finally just
I,
did that 2 days ago, and it was like, whoa, it just blew me away about a whole message about, you know, well, here's what it said to me. I'll just read you. I finally pulled the whole message together. It said, your exuberance, your determination are your strongest tools to face your fears. Be big, grow big, let nothing stop you. Never fear the pruning. New opportunities always arise. And of course, that fed into something I needed to hear in the last couple of days too. That's always the way those kind of synchronicities
uh,
work. Yeah, it's like there's
eh,
this. Sort of, I mean, if that's not an example of how long it takes for me to connect with something, sometimes,
in the words of a Doug Somm, Texas rock and roll star, saying, "Ain't that loving you, baby?"
right? Yeah.
You
So,
know,
and I felt like guilty over the past few years about like I hate cutting you in half, but I don't have any choice, and blah, blah, And now I
but
realize, no, it's just making them grow bigger and better. They're fine with it. I mean, plants are different.
yeah, yeah,
They're designed to lose 80 or 90% of their body and still live, whereas obviously animals can't do that. And so our concepts about our it's morally correct or not about how to treat another being, or it's really different with plants. They're okay with being pruned sometimes not, but completely clear cutting a forest, and no, I don't think that's ever okay. But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I understand.
yeah,
Uh, so they're having this relationship with you,
Yeah.
and when you go out there, you're feeling it with your heart. And so, does one flower feel different than the other as you walk about your garden?
Oh, the different kinds of flowers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're all different, just like people are different. You know, they grow differently. They grow at different times of the year. They grow in different ways. Some are tall and straight, and some are, some are short, some are tall, some are sweet, some are big, some are small. Yeah, it's all of this feeds into their, I think their physical characteristics feed into a lot into their story, but not, it's
Hmm.
not the whole story. It's not the whole message. You know, sometimes they are, um, bringing through a big universal message. Sometimes they're reflecting something you need to hear. Sometimes they may be a a a, a vehicle, a catalyst for your beloved dead to come through to you. I think they fill a number of different roles in the way that
Mm.
they connect with you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You were reading about you got a message from your mom from a flower in one of your Substack stories.
Oh,
So
I'm sure I did. Oh, from the Trillium, I think.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, the Trillium for me is about becoming, about generating new life, about the birth, death, and rebirth cycles. And my mom died in 2013, and yeah, can't remember what I wrote now exactly, but I'm remembering what I feel about this flower. And um, well, when I wrote about the flower in my Substack, I also remember talking about a powerful dream that I had around the time of her death too. And
Mm,
so the birth, death, rebirth cycle I felt in the flower brought up all of this experience that I had at the time that my mother died, and yeah, it was really powerful for me.
mm. Yeah, it really brings up the question. I mean, that maybe when they're in your yard or they get to know you, or maybe you wouldn't get this type of spontaneous response from just a wildflower you felt in the forest, but they begin
Sometimes,
to learn sometimes they learn your vibrations
yeah,
and they respond with another vibration
yeah,
that can be interpreted into a message.
yeah. Yeah, and you hit on something there. So yeah, there's the flowers in your yard, you're around them more, there's a relationship that develops. And yet then there's the wildflowers that you just run into when you're out on a hike, and they can be so powerful in their own way too. And then there's the whole evolutionary thing of our whole evolutionary relationship with flowers, you know. And so
Hmm.
sometimes the wildflowers are ones that we do use as medicine and we have for a long time, and other times they're just very independent and really don't, they're just there. Don't offer us too much in return. and
Yeah.
and the same with the flowers in our yard. A lot of them have been hybridized and really domesticated, and yet sometimes a lot of flowers in our yard are also flowers we bring in that are still wild, like dandelions,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That's an interesting comparison. The flowers that we buy at a corporate store that's been in these big greenhouses and grown
yeah,
very generically and with
yeah,
lots of fertilizer, and then
yeah,
they get stuck into real earth. And you know, do they are they wild when they are bought from the store, truly? And do they ever gain their wildness as they grow into nature compared to something that has never known Home Depot or something like that?
right. Well, um, let's just take the rose. So, roses have been hybridized for several thousand years, right? But
Mm, yes.
especially they've been dramatically hybridized since like the mid 1800s. Um, but they're always grafted onto the rootstock of a wild rose. And did you know that? And
No.
so
No.
if
That makes
you,
perfect sense.
right, that's what gives them the strength, the vitality to, but yeah. So, if you leave a hybrid rose and you just don't care for it, eventually it'll revert back to its original rootstock. and just be a wild rose again if you don't do anything with it for I don't know how many years, depends on the plant probably.
Mm.
So I always like to remember that. It's like when I get sad about all the roses that are, like grown in huge greenhouses in Colombia and sprayed with who knows what kind of chemicals and, stuffed into a plane and flown halfway across the world in 4 days. And they've got to be so disoriented, but they've still got a piece of that wild rose rootstock in them, that birthed them and grew them. And they've got such a long history with us. I think even these greenhouse roses still carry, some part of this long history that the roses
Mm.
have with us. It's like a rose isn't as individual as a person is. A
Mm.
flower, let's just say a flower, any flower. I don't really think of them as a single flower as an individual being the way we think of people as individual beings. It's more like a continuum that I can't quite explain. Yeah.
No, it's funny because I had a guest, Richard Stanley, who was talking about the cathars last
Mm-hmm.
week, and he was talking about consolamentum, where you received as a young man or woman or something, a direct vibration from another person who had been initiated into that uh, spiritual practice that the other person, the generations back, and this would go back to like John the Baptist as the Cathars, or maybe Solomon or David, that
Yeah.
every generation passed this down with an intention that was consolamentum. So
Wow.
why not with plants that
Right.
same way that you could go back to such purity?
Yeah. I think that's part of how I explain that the flowers are our elders. I mean, they've been around. If nothing else, it's all of the wisdom they have in their DNA for surviving through myriads of climate changes for 100 million years. When we've only been around, I mean, Homo sapiens been around 300,000 years, and our ancestors been around what 5 million years or something. But 100 million years to 150 million years. I mean, if nothing else, there's a huge continuum of DNA wisdom in there. But
Yeah,
we know it's way more than that. It's they're
yeah,
they're conscious, and they pass on. It's we used to have an oral culture where we passed on wisdom. Well, we don't understand how plants do it, but we know they pass on their wisdom and they know what to do.
would you dare say it's kind of Gaia wisdom?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, all right.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. We're right in the middle of the show, and I just wanted to let everybody know that you are on Becoming Quantum Conscious. I am Bart Sharp, and you're on United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 103.5 out of New Orleans, Louisiana. And you are with Mary Porter Kearns, and you can find her website at theflowersarespeaking.com, and her upcoming book, The Flowers Are Speaking. Oracle books being really reprinted. Uh, Oracle cards, excuse me. The Flowers Are Speaking. It's going to be out there, but also she has Substack, great Substack articles. I've been reading them today, as well as a really neat website, very available. Um, and some of those articles that you wrote, you kept referring to almost like there's seeds of different plants that just come up when needed, almost like after if there's a fire, they
Yeah.
a flower will come up. So it really uh, tells you, you could think of that as a scientific consciousness, but would you dare say that it's also a consciousness of something of a higher power directing or nourishing its own earth, so to
Yeah.
speak?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, whether you call it Gaia, Mother Earth, I mean, there's this womb that all the flowers have been they grow from. And so there's definitely, I feel like, a mother consciousness, earth consciousness that is the life force that they are all emanations of. Yeah.
Yeah, we had some comments from people. Robin Hart Shepherd, I had no idea that roses grafted to wild roses. I love it. Roses are so special to most of humanity. Hope you're enjoying Austin, Robin. And also, Phyllis Min says, having a loving relationship with my plants, I kiss my roses in my yard and tell them I love and appreciate them as I walk through the yard. You want to respond to that response?
Absolutely. I mean, we were talking about how do you connect with plants? Well, there's the start of it, talking to them and then also waiting for them to speak to you, to listen to them. I mean, they love hearing from us. They love feeling our love, but it's reciprocal. It works both ways. And when we open our heart a little bit, we can start to receive some kind of messages from them. And
Yeah.
yeah,
So
it's actually a two-way.
when you talk about slowing down, we're not talking about that you've like had 3 cups of coffee and smoking a cigarette and you're right there and I got to slow down. I don't think that's what you're talking about, is it?
Right. No, but the thought that you need to slow down, that's a good start. Yeah. I mean, it's like we're fast moving people compared to flowers. So whatever we can do, whether, take a deep breath is my always go to, I, I'm not a Catholic, but I pray the rosary. So a lot of times that slows me down, just saying, Hail Mary, just that, just a couple of times over and over. That's sort of my little mantra thing. But a deep breath, going for a walk out in nature always slows me down, slows down my heart rate, brings my attention into the natural world, and just being observant. And yeah, how do we slow down? That's a really good question, Bart.
So when I retired 16 years ago, I was a school teacher before that. I decided to write a book, and I wrote it about communing with nature and developing your psychic abilities. If anybody wants to buy the book, it's on Amazon, The Healing Planet. It's probably in their graveyard by now, 16, 17 years ago. However, one of the exercises I would do, because I wrote this book out in the forest. In other words, I walked out into this forest every day in the month of August and September. And as I walked, the rule was you would look at a plant or some natural shape and you would just enjoy it for that split second.
Yes.
And then as soon as your eyes move, because your eyes and body always want to move fast, you would enjoy the next thing you saw.
Yeah.
And that's all you would do without any judgment, without any explanation, definition. You would just observe and look. And, within 3 minutes, my whole body was in a totally different state.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I think that observing makes us present, so that we're not thinking about what we have to do tomorrow or what we screwed up yesterday or, all of that. That's the key, I guess. I think when we're talking about slowing down is being present. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so anything that you're doing to improve your skills with this?
The number one thing is to keep doing it. Just because I did it while I was writing the Oracle card deck and writing the book doesn't mean I realize it's like this, I need to do this like every day or every week for the rest of my life,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is your spirituality.
Yeah.
And God forbid, let's not call it a religion. But,
Right? No, but it's my connection. It's what makes me feel alive. That's how I know I'm real.
Personal power.
Yeah.
How does it help you with the 3D world?
Helps me feel grounded, like I know who I am, like I have roots, like I have something that's real that I can rely on, that when I get, I can always come back to the earth, come back to my roots into the earth, come back to my connection to the flowers, and Yeah, I just think it's so important that it just breaks my heart that I think so many people in the world don't have this. They feel so lost, and to me, it's right there outside my front door, or even in my memory. If I can just sit in my house and think of that flower and get that almost same experience.
Mm.
Um, yeah. So, and all of that brings, of course, along with it, a reverence for nature, which is, I think, so critical for us moving forward as a culture. We've got to recreate this reverence that our whole society once had for the earth. And how else can we go forward if we don't remember that we're just a part of it and it's not here for us? We are part of it, part of the earth, part of the flowers. It's anyway. That's my whole.
No, I totally
Yeah,
believe
yeah,
what you're saying 110% because
yeah,
when you have an extraordinary experience with something that's natural like that, a flower, or for me going to this fairy forest in France, or even
yeah.
in Austin at Barton Creek Wildlife
Anyway,
Preserve,
yeah,
your love of that is genuine, sincere.
right,
And what do you do next but want to have that shared with other people so they get it?
right, right. Without becoming preachy.
Yeah,
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 that's
nobody
the
gets
trick.
it that way.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
But
but so that's why I like to, anybody that wants to. I do have a whole worksheet process that I've developed when I work with people to help them drop into this space and actually hear
hmm.
the flowers. So
So
yeah,
do you think it kind of like the vibration in the flowers permeates into you and starts to change your frequency or your nervous system, and maybe helps you with even personal issues because you start to relax and you don't have so much tension around your
right,
repressed anger, say, for
yeah,
example.
right, yeah. Able to hear my own heart. Maybe it's
Mm,
and or sometimes I think the flowers just give the space so I can hear my own heart. Other times I think there's an actual message I'm receiving from the flowers that didn't come from me. But it's a fine line
yeah.
because you never quite know how your subconscious is. But sometimes it's like, whoa, where did that come from? I don't have any conscious understanding of that coming from me, you know. And I don't think it really matters whether it came from me or it came from the flower. It's all part of this connected consciousness, and so I don't think it really matters.
But it has a different frequency and vibration, and
Hmm.
therefore it
Yeah.
opens you to be a different person.
Yes.
Because
Exactly.
we are like a psychic SpongeBob. We're picking up
Right.
stuff all the time,
Right.
and you're just tuning into flowers and saying, "Wow, this has changed me." And now
Yeah.
I'm learning their language, so to speak.
Right. Yeah.
So with that said, are there any kind of specific languages or vibrations that you get from specific flowers, or the favorites that you that have something
Yeah.
that really gets you?
Yeah. Maybe it will help if I share like a couple of my favorite flowers, and two that are just fairly distinctly different. So
Beautiful.
the very first flower I ever worked with was magnolia. I've got two magnolia trees in my yard and always loved them. And magnolias they were once upon a time considered the oldest flower. They're considered an ancient primitive flower in their flower structure. And they know now there's some older flowers than that. But basically, magnolia was the first big flower that we knew about. And it's over 100 million years old. They're amazing.
Wow.
Like they're pollinated by beetles because bees weren't even around when they started flowering. So they learned their dance and connected with beetles and how to attract beetles. And that's why they're kind of tough because the beetles are, they'll chomp on anything. And anyway, I digress. But the magnolia and I'm talking about the southern magnolia, the big, luscious magnolia flowers that have that incredible scent that's kind of citrusy and sweet all at the same time. And I started to feel like I could just curl up inside their flowers. Anyway, they were clearly about unconditional love to me, like this ancient mother and unconditional love, and just the elder of elders for me.
Mm.
Um, and so then contrasting that with, say, an echinacea, a purple coneflower. Okay, echinacea is known for being a very popular herbal medicine, but think about if you've ever seen one grow. They grow. The stem is very tall and straight, always, straight as an arrow, and then they've got this really spiky seed head up on top. They're just all about thrusting up and being strong. And for me, their message is all about strength. And so part of that is from how they grow. Part of it is from this really great medicine they bring us, and part of it's just the whole message that I heard originally from them. And so anyway, I think you can start to get a sense of the different vibrations and feelings that I got from those two different flowers. And
Yeah.
yeah, if that helps.
I know that's wonderful. I love the story of the magnolia, and if you're really a really whippersnapper type of psychic or something, maybe you could go into the reality of that and really feel what 100 million years of genealogy would feel like,
Yeah.
because that would be a guide for you. There, to
Right.
me, whether you're touching a very old crystal or going to a sacred site or touching a rose or a flower,
Yeah.
they're like a roadmap.
Yeah.
You,
Exactly.
you can go into the territory if you choose to
Yeah.
drive. And we have a
Right.
message from Robin Shepherd here. I highly recommend that everyone take Mary's Zoom class to learn how to communicate with flowers. I enjoyed it so much, and I will never look at flowers the same way again. And we had so much fun. Thank you,
Oh,
Robin.
thank you, Robin. Yeah. We
So
did have fun. Yeah.
it brings me up to, when I read this title of your workshops, I just go, WTF, this is cool. I didn't say exactly that way, but I like this title, Exploring the Secrets of Flowers, Rekindling Intuition, and, can't read my own writing, and
Joy and joy with
joy. Thank you. I was going to say sex, and I'm going, what? Rekindling intuition and joy with, now I like this part the best, Earth's oldest teachers.
yeah.
That one just like, that pulled me in. Earth's oldest teachers. Why is that part of your title?
Well, I know you work a lot with trees, so you might, want to debate with me whether trees are our oldest teachers. But for me, it's the flowers. And I
Mm.
think it's the flowers because flowers have a special relationship with humans. We developed, like along with a lot of other mammals, to be able to focus on the flowers, which made fruits, which made our food, and to be able to reach out for them and to focus on them. So we have been our whole evolutionary life focused on flowers.
Mm.
Um, and so we've developed this incredible relationship with them and knowing, understanding deeply all the flowers in our ecosystem and environment that we've lived in and all of that. And so I think there's this literally this love story that goes back to our whole evolutionary history with flowers. So, um, but yes, I mean, it's not to say they're our only teachers, because of course trees and mountains and rivers and every other being on the planet is as well. But there's a special thing that with flowers and human beings.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they have some very deep messages and such,
Mm-hmm.
which really brings me back to one of the most flowers that always just amazes me. And there's so many of them in France. You'd just be dying if you lived here.
Oh, yeah,
They're everywhere, and that is roses.
yeah.
And what's your impression of the rose?
I do think we have our deepest, oldest relationship with the rose. There's something so sacred and so special. It's the biggest chapter in my book.
Mm.
But I don't just repeat all the things that so many other people have explored and said. I just hit on a few different points. But I think it comes down to, I mean, people talk about it has the higher frequency, it has this and that. The planet Venus, has a rotating orbit that's like a rose. I mean, there's so
Whoa,
much. You haven't heard that before? I
I
mean,
haven't heard that before.
yeah, the orbit of Venus over, is it, I don't know, I want to
Yeah,
say 8 years, but I could have it wrong. But anyway, it ends up
yeah,
looking like
yeah, yeah.
it looks like a rose window, by the time it goes around this thing. It's
Well,
it's
don't get
pretty
me
amazing.
started. Don't get me started on Venus, but that's
Yeah,
another story.
right, right. Um, yeah, I mean, some of our oldest, goddess myths go back and always have roses in them. It, our oldest goddess stories were always giving roses to Isis, to all the oldest goddesses. I mean, it's just there's so I think it again goes back way farther than we have any written history of. I mean, that's 5 or 10,000 years of history we know about. I think it probably goes back 50,000 to 100,000 years that we have had this connection with roses. And we don't eat roses, so it's not just for the food, but the medicine, the smell, the connection, and it's probably we're trying to understand it with our heads, and it's probably simply a heart resonance is all it is, and we'll never be able to put it into words.
Yeah, I think
Don't
it's a
know.
big.
Yeah,
I mean, to me, sometimes I
yeah,
go in another other reality, so to speak. Like it
yeah,
opens me to just a higher plane of thinking, because I
right.
think there are roses and plants that elevate us.
Yeah,
They are such a high frequency,
yeah,
and you can't really explain it.
yeah.
And we have Robin Shepherd again. Can you address the importance of passion flowers? They're so exotic and otherworldly to me. Ooh, good question.
Here's a good question. But Robin, I hate to tell you this, but that's not a flower that I have worked with yet.
Ah,
But it's on my list. But I don't grow it in my yard, and I don't have a direct experience with it yet. But I want to,
that's
because
a
I agree they are so exotic and so full of energy, and I want to know more about them. So they're on my list of flowers I want to get to know better. That's about all I can tell you today. I'm sorry.
yeah.
So
Well,
you have to
Robin,
go do it. You have to explore yourself, Robin,
yeah,
because you've been
yeah,
in my
yeah.
class.
Robin, you got I think 6 minutes before we start ending the show up. So if you can go run outside and have a 6 minute communion and get back with us, it might work. Or you can stay here and do it later.
Yeah. And not everywhere in the world had roses. Not, I mean, they have grown in the northern hemisphere and not the southern hemisphere so much. So not all the peoples in the world had roses, but so many have. They have
Mm,
been all over the whole northern hemisphere,
yeah, yeah,
our whole history. Yeah.
yeah. And
Um,
it's so wonderful. On one of your other articles, you were referring to another author, but she was talking about plants teach us God is change. You know what? Remember the quote that I'm stemming this from, that God, that the whole planet is changing, but that is part of what spirituality or God is change,
yeah.
and
Change.
plants are leading that.
Yes. That's a lot of what I say in several different ways, and have quoted other people too that say the same thing, that they know more than we do about these changes that are going on in our climate. And we can take a lot of clues from them. I mean, the one, several things we have observed is, plants that are moving upslope and farther north and rapidly changing the way they're reproducing or changing. I mean, they know the changes are coming and they're making adaptations. And if we could work with them, how much more could we learn and understand about how, instead of trying to keep everything the same, keep our
Hmm.
climates the same as it was, what instead could we learn about how to adapt to the coming changes? Because it is changing. I think it's probably too late to try to take it back the way it was, the way we have
Yeah,
had for
yeah,
5 or 10,000 years. The fact is, it's changing, and so what do we do?
it's changing.
And if we,
Yeah,
and the plants and the flowers can show us a lot about how to adapt because they've done this several times. This isn't their first go round like it is. for us essentially. Well, I'm sure we've had ancestors that lived through a few climate changes, but not like the plants have. It's been,
Yeah, because they're rapidly changing with all of this.
yeah,
They're constantly, every season, adapting and taking on
yeah,
a new identity from what they learned from last year.
right, exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and of course, I mean, maybe you agree with this or not, but we can always plant more trees for oxygen and more plant life in general wherever you go to
yeah,
help stabilize our environment.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the plants are way more numerous than animals are on the planet, much less humans.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Although
yeah,
we got to convince the humans to appreciate plants and bring this into their life and take care of them.
yeah,
However, can we begin to love plants more to where we create a connection that maybe helps the consciousness grow that way?
right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah, if we can start to understand how plants perceive our world. I mean, we're starting. It's easier for us to understand, say, how a dolphin or an elephant or an octopus perceives the world than it is for a plant because they're so different than we are. And it just completely blows my mind wide open when I try to think about how they understand their world through thousands of chemicals they put out into the world. That's their language, that's their words. I mean, I can barely wrap my head around it. And sometimes I get a glimpse, like this little glimmer of like, oh my gosh, what would that be like? You know, to have. So anyway, the more we can understand how other beings communicate and sense the world around us, I think it changes everything. We have so much more possibilities. So I think they help us
We
understand our
do.
world. Yeah,
So everybody, listen up to your backyard.
yeah,
And as a friend of mine says, who's an Apache medicine healer, Marika Alvarado, all your medicines will grow in your backyard if you just pay attention.
yes, exactly. What you need is right there.
Yeah, what an intimacy.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's all around us, and it's so beautiful. So, you know, tell us about what's going on. What are you putting out in the world? What's creating? What's to come? What's releasing?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Bart. You've mentioned a lot of it. I've got that workshop starting at the end of August, exploring the secrets of flowers. And I love for people to sign up for my Substack. It's free. I don't have any fee for it. And that way people can follow my writing and get some tips on how they can connect with flowers and, um, hear things about upcoming and hear news about my book that I hope will be heading toward publication this fall. Not coming out this fall, heading
Hmm.
toward being. So sometime hopefully in the next year, it'll be published. And what else? Then that's the best way to keep in touch and see what's upcoming.
Yeah.
And follow me on Instagram. I put out a lot of tips on how to connect with flowers on Instagram and my Facebook.
All
Um,
right.
so yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to encouraging Mary to contribute to my Mary Magdalene Sacred Sites of Mary Magdalene France tours, and just how
yeah,
plants and spirituality have all been together. Of course, as we know, Mary Magdalene had that very potent jar, which she probably knew how to understand plants and what was
yeah,
best for healing, and then put them in that jar with all of her stuff and make some kind of potent potion for healing and other things, I'm
absolutely,
sure. Because that's
absolutely,
kind of how it works with
right.
all of that. So, we're coming to the end of the show. Um, what parting wisdom do you want to leave everybody with? And while you think about that, I'm going to let everybody know that you've been listening to Mary Porter Kearns at www.theflowersarespeaking.com. And my name is Bart Sharp, and this is Becoming Quantum Conscious. and you're on United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 103.5 out in New Orleans, Louisiana. And next week we will have Krishna Rose, and we will be talking about modern day wisdom from teachings and lessons from Mary Magdalene. It's not exactly what the title's going to be, but you get the gist. And then the week after that, we'll be going into the Aramaic and world and Mary Magdalene world of Anna Otero. And then I already have a delighted pre-recorded show with Rob Wildwood, who wrote the books Magical France and Magical Britain, as I got to tour with him a couple of days when I was in England 2 weeks ago. And it's a great show on sacred sites from the voice of a real fairy man. Fairy people kind of have a hard time living in this world, but when you meet one and you get their story out, it's really quite phenomenal. And I think I have a good one on this show. So I've delayed long enough. What kind of wisdom do you want to end the show with, man?
Well, maybe two things if I've got a second. So one is just, when you're out there in your backyard, in addition to speaking to the flowers, remember they want to speak to you and start to listen to them. It's just kind of a mind changer when you start to look at them that way. And then I thought I'd share the message that Rose gave me a few years ago. So Rose says, "We have grown together out of the stardust. Only my deep fragrance carries all the memories of our history together. I have long embodied your quest for beauty, and now my most sublime blooms are deeply dependent upon your care. And your own beauty blossoms in my presence when you allow me into your glorious heart. We dance our dance together on this earth, bringing out what is most beautiful in each other as we grow and bloom from our mother's dirt, drawing from her strength. My petals anoint the ground I grow from as they fall in gratitude for having been able to share all my beauty with you."
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
What a wonderful way to end the show. Thank you, Mary Kearns, and at theflowersarespeaking.com. And thank everybody for joining in and tuning in to Becoming Quantum Conscious. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Bart. Everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Oh, we have one more. Robin says, "Can you address the..." Nope, sorry, that's wrong. That was already done. Bye-bye, everybody.
All right, bye.